Okay, I think I got it. Hopefully the microphone's on this time. That's been a problem for me. But I'm Steve, and this is the Deployed from Detroit School of Leadership and Madness. And I'm going to try and be quick this time. If we get one comment more than any other kind of comment, it's that, boy, your stuff sure is long. Yeah, it is for this format. It's meant to be an audio thing, and we just haven't gotten our asses together to get that going. So we're just kind of storing everything on YouTube, and this is our weird sort of startup process. We're seeing what we can take advantage of for free, and then in the meantime, I don't know. But in all, let me get to the point here, okay? What do I want to talk about quickly? As quickly as I can, I think I can give you some pretty good advice to make your training more effective by making it more interesting. Um, and it's actually kind of a simple process once you get the hang of it. And it's a matter of kind of getting the hang of it. Um, but I'll just run you through the loop real quick. And we've discussed this a bunch of times already. And so maybe this will give you some motivation to go digging through our longer stuff and see what you can't find. But for this bit, it steals heavily from Dan Harmon, who steals very heavily from Joseph Campbell, who steals very heavily from everyone else in the world. But it's this idea of the monomyth or the story circle, as how Dan Harmon put it together. And let me throw it up over here so you guys can see it. Da-da-da. Here's my crazy illustration of it. This is a sort of a really quick rundown of how it looks. And how this is going to help your training is kind of interesting because what we find in these monomyth stories, these stories that perpetuate through time, things like the Odyssey, all the Knight's Tales, things like that, it's about the development of an individual into a new kind of individual, which is exactly what you're doing with your training. You are producing a person who, at the beginning of this training, cannot tie their shoes. But at the begin, you provide them with the need of, hey, buddy, you need to tie your shoes, otherwise you're tripping all over the place. You go, you take them to whatever the place is of, all right, we're going to sit down and start tying our shoes, and then you search, you show them different ways and different methods. Here's the rabbit, here's the loop. You find they figure it out finally. They take it, tying your shoes, it's not so dramatic, but they take that lesson and then they return out and then maybe they show their friends how to tie their shoes. And maybe, that's the change, but that's the simplicity of this circle. When we apply this to training more thematically, here, I'm going to bring it up here so you guys can see it too. This comes out, this is really clear in like military basic training. Here, I'll slide over so I'm not cut my own head off. You is always the beginning in a story. You determines who the character is, and so wherever you see the character at the beginning of a story really tells you everything you didn't need to know about that person. If they're in the market having a nice time, then that just shows you their comfort level. They're a domestic kind of person. They live their kind of life. If the beginning of the movie shows them in a fight scene, you know already, oh, this person is a fighter and they're into some kind of violence, or that first scene is always indicative of who they are. And so in basic training, you're nothing, maggot, and so they stand on the yellow lines. You don't know anything. There's people who, because it gets so infantilizing, like pee themselves and poop themselves, and that's terrifying to the outsider, but it's perfect because we don't need anyone being real cocky when they join the military. We need people as humble as they possibly can be. Their heads are going to get big enough anyway, so like we need to knock that down a peg. And then the need is sort of presented, and this is like the call to adventure. Someone's grandma gets sick, and then, well, there's a potion you can get from this wizard. Uh-oh. And so the need that's presented in basic training is one, hey, well, I need to clarify here. Or pause. Apologies. I'm getting this looked at, actually. I'm finally getting my head scanned. We'll see why I can't string together sentences for longer than 5 minutes without speeding off in different directions. Oh yeah, so the need of boot camp. We need you to get your shit together. There's a war going on. There's something going on. There is a situation wherein you need to become a better person. And then the go portion is in the story. It's when they enter the dark forest. It's and as you can see on the circle here, let's see if I can kind of point. Doodle-doo. Mouse is a little tiny, but as you see on the circle here, it gets into the darkness. And that go is really when it gets scary. And in boot camp, that's when you meet your new drill sergeant. That's when you're in your platoon or your flight or whatever it's called in the other services. And that's when this demon pops out through the doors and starts kicking your shit in. And now you're in hell. And so that's that go. And then the search is the training montage you've seen in every movie where they do the pull-ups and the push-ups. And the find is that time they like finally don't struggle, or they whatever it is. But the find is ultimately that moment of when they find like, okay, this is who I really am, but then also they recognize like, here's the real challenge ahead. Is that like, okay, this is what I can accomplish, but what needs to be accomplished is still much greater. And then the take portion in here, and there's usually a pay portion to this too, in stories at least. Sometimes you'll have to, you'll take the thing you need in order to succeed. So I took the fire, but in that case, Prometheus gets burned as well. And so there is some often a difficulty that needs to be overtaken. So an obstacle course. As silly as that is, it helps that process. It helps cement this whole journey. And then the return is usually this whole take process in basic training is out in the field, or it's the dirty portion of the training. And then the return is the triumphant march back to the barracks, and there's music and this, that, and the other thing. And the other return of that too is when they let you go home and you're wearing your uniform around town or whatever you do on Base Liberty, but you're reintroduced to the world as this new creature. And so in this last part, you return to the world as this changed creature, and now you are this new you. And that's why this is a circle. That's why you can do a novel, but you can also do a TV episode, because there's always a new you at the end, and so you can always start a new story. So what is all this really trying to get at? You don't have to do all the background research to start thinking about how you can do this. You don't have to go in and read Joseph Campbell. You don't have to even sit through the hours of stuff we've talked about just to start considering this idea and how you can apply it to your training and how you want to get your people trained. You need to give them a reason. And this is part of that. You're providing them with a hero's journey. You're giving them an opportunity to be the hero of their own story. Also, there's something significant about that, why this hero's journey is presented this way throughout history so many times, is because of sorry, my brain's fritzing again, sparks and what have you. It lasts. This is something that, what's amazing, if I've run through this circle and it sounds familiar to you and you haven't heard of this before, it's because of how much of it lasts and how much of this, if any one of these elements is missing from a story, you don't think it's a good story. It sort of objectively is a not bad story, it just isn't a good one. If at some point the hero doesn't change, who cares? If it's just, if there's no change if there's no character arc, as they say on, for like a lot of TV shows, there's someone's character arc as they develop. Bland, other than that, no, because even with House, like, yeah, he had a real steady kind of, he's just a dickhead. But then even through, they're like, well, let's address this opiate thing, and let's address this. And so there was development. Like, even someone who is consistent still has the ability to go through these steps and go through these processes. So, one, if you're allowing your students or trainees or whoever they are to be heroes, sort of in a natural sense, And not in a big, grand, majestic sense. They don't have to be firefighters or cops or whatever. It could be, like I said, tying your shoes. But what you're providing is a sort of logical and natural way of presenting what you need to get across to other people. So you need to establish with your troops, what do they know already? What do you expect they know? Maybe you should get some information to change that around, present them with the need, the call to adventure. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. And at the end of it, it's going to be terrific. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the challenges ahead. Here's the rewards. And then the go part, you push them into a new environment. And a lot of times, this means, and it depends on what you have at your availability. But in a lot of times, this will mean step out of the classroom, step out of wherever you are normally. Maybe you need to do it in a different environment so that they can't rely on the things they had at home. They can only really rely on themselves and each other in this training situation. So if you have them, we normally work in this office building, but we're going to do this training situation out in the park, or we're going to do it in the parking lot, or we're going to do it in the lobby. But do it somewhere where they don't have the things that they normally rely on. All the things they typically fall back on aren't going to be there. So they can only rely on themselves, each other, and then you and the other people training them. And then in this search phase, you give them the opportunity to stumble in the darkness for a little bit so they can test the skills that they use back there. So you're really allowing them to figure out who they are sort of in this dark period. And you're giving them, it's the training wheels period of just let them go and see how they go on their own for a while. And if they fall down, whatever, that's interesting. I've seen people fall on training wheels too, but you give them that opportunity. And then there's also guidance, though, too. In stories, this is where the mentor shows up. In the search phase, this is when, Obi-Wan Kenobi is probably, this is when he meets Obi-Wan and Han Solo and those guys. And Obi-Wan's early in the need, too. But anyway, blah, 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 blah. But in this search phase, it's okay to have mentors. It's okay to have guides. It's okay to have people who can help you get through the dark. And in that find phase, you're giving them, they're stumbling through the dark to a thing. And once they get to that thing, then they're going to be good from there on out. And so you're going to get them to this point of, and it's usually the surprise. It's where the twist is in a movie a lot of times. It's when Dorothy finds out that the wizard's just a dude. And you go, oh, okay. Well, apparently Dorothy's the most powerful creature out there now. So that's interesting. And you're kind of presenting this same sort of twist. You don't have to orchestrate it as a twist. And so I might be doing a disservice saying it that way. But you're whatever they're searching for, this is when they find that thing. So they fumble through the dark and now they have the technique. They have the piece of information, whatever it is you're trying to get them. And once they have that sort of established, then there's the take and pay. And then in most training, it's just a matter of practice. The take and the pay is you go into the kill house 500 times, and then on the 500th time, you actually survive it, or whatever it is. But it's the challenge, it's the obstacle, it's the thing you overcome that really solidifies all the things. It's the time that you use the tool you regained, or that you sort of found in that last phase. And then in the return phase, what you're doing is you're telling these people, and you're sending them back to their unit, back to their place. So we're bringing it back the circle around, back into the light area. And so now they're going back into the office. And so you take them back into the office now with their new set of skills and their new set of training. And as these newly changed individuals, you start to push them towards their new you. And that's what, usually this is all done in a debrief with training. Sometimes it's done in an internship or a program kind of like that, where you send somebody away to sort of further that process, and then they come back to a new home. But if you're just, teaching CPR or whatever, that you bring everybody back into the office, and then you say, okay, so if something happened in the office, what do we do? And run a quick scenario or do a quick little drill there and that, and then, address the new you. I'm confident that you folks all understand this information, and I feel much safer now. So, ta-da. It's a lot of rambling. It's a lot of scooting through some pretty complex information. Uh, but it's not impossible to grasp. It's not anything outside of your wheelhouse or anyone else's wheelhouse. Because if you've ever understood any Grimm's fairy tale or episode of The Simpsons or anything like that, the circle's there. And so you're already familiar with this. You're already familiar with what encourages you, what makes you go, what inspires you. When you're reading your favorite novel, what makes it your kind of favorite novel? What about that novel drives you to go, yes, keep turning these pages? That same kind of drive and motivation will allow your training to be done in a way that people enjoy. Basic training is not always fun, but at the end you're like, glad I went. And so your training will be interesting. It'll be memorable. It'll be something that will stick with them, which is 100% what you want training to be. Nobody wants forgettable training. Nobody wants boring training. Nobody wants a PowerPoint slide. So consider what the story is you're trying to get across. Who are your heroes? Where are they now? And what kind of new creatures will they be at the end of the story? If you can figure that out, I think you're going to have a good time. So, check out the rest of the material, deployfromdetroit.com. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm trying to be as quick as I can here. Let me know how this was, or whatever. I'm sure I'll find out if we get any new views. But we're still trying. We're still out here. We're still doing our thing. In brief housekeeping update. So far, so good. Paperwork is in order. That's mostly why we haven't been doing shows, because it takes too much of my attention to do the... And then this has been a thing. My language has been weird. So, but please check it out. Let us know how we can do. If you think you can do our job better, please let us know. We'd be down to hear you. We don't really need to be doing this ourselves. We just know that it needs to be done. So contact us. Get a hold of us. Deployedfromdetroit.com. dfd.slm at deployedfromdetroit.com. We love you, gang. All right. Have a good one.